Believe it or not, the Lorna Shore to MGK pipeline is a thing. What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock NBA, and today we're here to talk about Lorna Shore, one of the most interesting but also unexpected success stories of the past few years. And if you're not familiar, they sound like this. Pretty extreme stuff, right? Not exactly accessible. And yet they're reaching a level of success that no band in their genre has reached since Suicide Silence a decade earlier. They've gotten tens of millions of streams. They just played Lollapalooza. Loudwire picked one of their songs as the song of the year in 2021, and they are showing no signs of slowing down. But although a lot of people think of them as some kind of new band that just recently came out and broke through, they've actually been around for over a decade now, kind of flirting with breakout success for years until it finally happened last year in 2021. And what I find so interesting about their story is all those false starts that happened along the way. How they've been able to again and again overcome things that would have just destroyed most bands. Most notably changing vocalists 3 times, something which is almost always fatal for a band if it happens even once. So how did they do it? And more importantly, what lessons can we learn from their kind of long, winding path to success? Those are the questions that I will answer in this video. But first, if you haven't, please check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming twice a week from 4 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there's a link to that in the description of this video. But first, I want to thank Factor for sponsoring this video. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. It's clean eating made easy, which is perfect for me because I care a lot about my diet, but I also don't have a lot of time to cook and I kind of hate it. Factor supports wholesome eating and makes it simple. And their meal plans have a ton of variety with a rotating weekly menu of over 25 different options. You can choose your favorite meals, or you can let Factor craft your order based on your taste preferences and meal history. One thing I really like is that Factor is much more fresh than a lot of the other options, and they only use premium ingredients as opposed to a lot of these frozen, super processed meals. I work a lot and honestly, I just kind of hate cooking. So I love that when it's time for lunch, I can just run downstairs, pick something from the fridge, heat it up, and I'm good to go. It's really convenient, but I'm still hitting my macro goals. This month, I got the Calorie Smart option, and honestly, they taste really, really good. So if you want to check it out, head to go.factor75.com/punk130 and use code punk130 to get $130 off across 6 boxes. Once again, just head to go.factor75.com/punk130 and use code punk130 to save $130 across 6 boxes. And there's a link to that in the description of this video. For most people, the first time that they heard Lorna Shore was the summer of 2021 when they released their breakthrough single To the Hellfire, but the band had actually been around for over a decade at that point. Their first release was actually back in 2010, an EP called Triumph, and although it sounds pretty much nothing like what they do now, it was actually pretty damn good for a 2010 metalcore band. This was followed by a self-released EP called Bone Kingdom, which is when they moved on from metalcore to playing deathcore, although it was more of a Chelsea Grin style of like brutal deathcore than the blackened symphonic style of deathcore that they would go on to do a few years later. And even though the band themselves seemed to not like this EP very much, I think it's pretty damn good. They also had their first brush with viral fame when their song Life of Fear was used in a viral video that you may remember from back then called Heavy Metal Cats, which got millions and millions of views. And this was the start of a pattern that kind of defined Lorna Shore's career until very recently. They would have what seemed like it was about to be a breakthrough moment, but for whatever reason, it just kind of fizzled and didn't happen. For example, think about what that Smosh video did back in the day for I Set My Friends on Fire. Well, that kind of viral moment didn't really happen for Lorna Shore, but the band just kept moving on. Their next release was called Maleficium in 2014, featuring the debut of their current drummer Austin, who really kind of formed forms the core songwriting duo of the band, along with their guitarist Adam D'Amico. And again, this is more of that brutal deathcore kind of style. And personally, I think it's pretty fucking good, especially considering that it's almost 10 years old now. I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't take off more when it came out, because it's like honestly really good. But that just seems to be the story with Lorna Shore in general. And from what I understand, the band sees this as kind of like the unofficial rebirth of Lorna Shore. Like if you look at the description on YouTube, they refer to it as their debut EP, even though it's actually their third release. Another interesting thing to note is that it was produced by Zach Cervini, who has gone on to become one of the hottest producers in rock, working with everyone from Blink-182 to Limp Bizkit and Machine Gun Kelly. So believe it or not, the Lorna Shore to MGK pipeline is a thing. And next, the band went into the studio with Will Putney to record their first full-length album, Psalms, which they self-released in 2015. And although overall, I would say that this album is still kind of in more of the brutal deathcore style, this is when they really started to bring in some of those blackened symphonic elements that define their sound now. And with this album, they had finally gotten one of these big breakthroughs that they'd been working for years and years and years. The album caught the attention of Outer Loop Records, who signed them in 2016 and released their next album, Flesh Coffin, in 2017, which is probably their first release where if you listen to it now, it would sound like the Lorna Shore of today. And finally, things were in a good place for the band. They were signed, they had toured with tons of great bands like Archspire, Carnifex, Born of Osiris, and Dying Fetus, among many others, and it seemed like the band had really finally found their groove. As their guitarist Adam said, everything was going really, really well, and it was really awesome to see the fruits of our labor come to a point. Before Flesh Coffin, we were struggling a lot, but with Flesh Coffin, we had a lot of touring success, and we were just feeling really, really great. But as always seems to be the case for Lorna Shore, that did not last for long. First, their bassist and founding member Gary Herrera left in 2017, citing a loss of interest in making heavy music. Then their vocalist Tom Barber also left the band, this time to join Chelsea Grin, who were at the time a much bigger band than Lorna Shore. And so this meant that technically there were no original members left in Lorna Shore, and the band's morale was at an all-time low. Losing a vocalist is almost always a huge blow to any band, especially when it's someone like Tom Barber, who was one of the most highly regarded vocalists in the genre. So a lot of people thought that the band was finished just as they were starting to get some real success. And a lot of bands probably would have chosen to just break up rather than essentially start all over, and I wouldn't blame them for that. But Lorna Shore chose to keep going and find a new vocalist. And they found that new vocalist in CJ McCreery, who had previously been in another deathcore band called Signs of the Swarm, who had also been getting some buzz in kind of the underground scene. And surprisingly, the band really didn't miss a beat. They got on the 2019 Summer Slaughter Tour with Cattle Decapitation and The Faceless, and announced that they had signed to Century Media, one of the biggest labels in metal, and even Lil Uzi Vert was a fan. Things were looking very good for the band, but as usual with Lorna Shore, that wasn't going to last for long. After recording their third album, Immortal, with Josh Schrader, a series of allegations came to light against their new vocalist, and just before Christmas of 2019, the band fired him, which left them in a really tough spot, kind of unsure what to do with this album. Should they still release it, given that the vocalist was no longer in the band and also probably not a great human being? But on the other hand, should the rest of the band be punished for the actions of one person who had only been in the band for a few months?
Is the record going to come out? Is the record not going to come out? And like, we had no answer because like everyone knows, like right before Christmas to like after New Year's, the industry is non-existent, and like no one's in office, no one's answering, and like this all happened during that period of time. So we're just sitting here like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on.
And so weighing those two things, they made the difficult decision to go ahead and release the album in 2020. And as much as CJ does seem like he's probably not a great person, the album is incredible. It took that symphonic, blackened deathcore style that they'd been doing for a while, but really perfected it. And it got heavy praise from the deathcore scene, with almost everybody saying that this is the best material they'd ever done, and among the very best stuff in the entire genre, and personally, I would agree with both of those things. But still, the fact remains that the band had no vocalist, and with COVID hitting like a month after the release of the album, even if they did have a vocalist, they couldn't tour. So once again, the band found themselves in a really tough place. And in case you haven't picked it up by now, this has been the story of Lorna Shore's entire career. And all of that perseverance was about to pay off with the real turning point of their career when their current vocalist, Will Ramos, joined the band in 2021. He was originally just going to fill in for one tour. He was somebody that they just kind of knew from around the New Jersey scene and from his previous metalcore band, Monument of a Memory. And he was also a big fan of the band. As Will says, I always listened to Lorna. When Godmaker came out, I was like, this is my favorite band, period. I always jammed them a lot. That tour with Will went really well. They offered him the spot as their permanent vocalist. He accepted, and the entire trajectory of the band was about to change. They went back into the studio with Josh Schrader to record a 3-song EP called As I Return to Nothingness, with Will on vocals, and the first single was called To the Hellfire, which came out about a year ago in 2021. And if you've made it this far into the video, then you probably know what happened with this song. It blew up like literally almost overnight. It hit #1 on the iTunes metal chart in its first week. It just kind of took over the whole like underground metal scene and instantly catapulted the band to a whole new level.
We've never seen the band be perceived in this light, so it's just like, what the hell do we do? We're just always used to being like, yeah, Lorna Shore, it's a cool band, they do good, and like that's really about it. But to be seen where it's like you can't look anywhere for like the past few weeks without seeing Lorna Shore, it's been like, this is kind of strange for me.
The music video for To the Hellfire is now over 10 million views, and Lorna Shore is easily the biggest breakout band in the genre since Suicide Silence hit the Billboard Top 40 with The Black Crown back in 2012. And let's talk about why all this happened and what made things finally click into place for them. Well, the biggest factor here is obviously their new/current vocalist, Will Ramos. He's an incredible vocalist, but just as importantly, he is also a great frontman. And it's important to understand that vocalist and frontman are not the same thing. A frontman is someone who has the charisma to be the public face of the band, to talk to the press and the fans, and really kind of be like a mini celebrity, at least as far as that exists in the context of deathcore. Their previous vocalists, Tom and CJ, I think were both excellent vocalists, and I think pretty much everyone would agree with me on that. But what was missing is that neither of them was capable of being a great frontman like Will is. Will actually reminds me of Mitch Lucker from Suicide Silence, in that he just seems so like genuinely nice and friendly, like just such an approachable person.
What is it exactly you're making? You're gonna have to
give it a name right now. First thing comes to your mind. Boom.
Fajaka Show.
Fajaka Show.
But at the same time, we can't give Will all the credit by any means, because the flip side of that is that as great as Will is, he also needed a great band with great music. Like I said, he had been in other bands for years that kind of really never took off because, to be totally blunt, their music just wasn't good enough. It was certainly good, but it wasn't great. So clearly Will alone is not some sort of like godlike superpower that can make anything popular, right? Because nobody is that person. But when you put the two together, a great band who also needs a great frontman and vice versa, well, that is when you get lightning in a bottle like To the Hellfire. And secondly, that specific song was perfectly written to take advantage of what I guess you could call like the current deathcore meta of TikTok and reaction channels on YouTube. And the key to that, believe it or not, is that that song and their music in general is actually highly influenced by pop. As Adam says, I've been a Justin Timberlake fan since NSYNC. That got me into music as a young kid. I take a lot of influence from that and I try to add it to the band in some way. And not just that, To the Hellfire was specifically written to be, I guess, what you could call like a pop deathcore song. When we went in the studio with Josh, he was like, let's just try and do a very basic pop structure, which is like verse, half chorus, post chorus, verse, full chorus, bridge, chorus, and outro. It was a very simple pop structure orientation. That's how that song came about the way it did. It's a very digestible, understandable song, which it is. I mean, obviously it's really fast and brutal and all that, but unlike so much current deathcore, which is what I like to call riff salad, meaning it's just a bunch of riffs put together with no structure, which is why the songs oftentimes aren't memorable. This song was the polar opposite of that. It was the perfect fit for TikTok, where the ridiculous breakdown towards the end of the song was used in thousands of TikToks. To the point where it actually reached number 4 on Spotify's viral top 50 chart, which if you aren't familiar is a huge accomplishment. Like, this is oftentimes where you'll see Post Malone and Bad Bunny and like the top mainstream artists like that. And so for them to hit that chart was a huge deal for the band and for the genre in general. And with that breakdown being such a just ridiculous over the top spectacle, it also spawned hundreds, if not maybe thousands of reaction videos on YouTube, many of which had hundreds of thousands or even over 1 million views themselves. It was basically like a massive influencer marketing campaign for the song, except that it was 100% organic and it didn't cost the band a penny.
I feel like if you ever needed to explain highs, mids, and lows to someone, as far as like scream tonality, this would be a brilliant song for it.
Which brings us to the present day. Here we are in the summer of 2022. The band has released a couple new singles that have all done really well. They have a new full length coming this fall. And I personally am super excited to see what comes next for them, because it has been so long, like literally a decade, since deathcore had a real breakout band like this. And most of all, I'm honestly just happy for these guys. They've been through a lot of ups and downs, but they've always kept going in the face of things that honestly probably would have made most people quit, including me. So I think it's super inspiring to see what they've accomplished and see all those years of hard work pay off like this. So hats off to them, and I can't wait to see where they go from here. All right, everybody, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and I want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get all my podcasts a week early. I do giveaways, I do some other fun stuff, and there is a way to have me review your music or artwork or anything else you would like to get my eyes or ears on. All you need to do is join at the $10 and up level. Every month I do a call for submissions. If you want me to review something, just drop it in the comments of that post. Then I will review it live on Twitch and post it on Patreon for everyone to see. So if that sounds cool, just hit the link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.